Kaiman anak pagdan Benau, wap chan pimut urap, na English jaan Wendy. Hunggar Shelton sanak, iki rate skatnya engka ringkir da ura tumyap kerja dapat ke ura University of Guyana. Tumyap pian now English na karay pardan da. In option, my name is the Hummingbird, and in English it's Wendy. I'm from Shelton. I've recently started working at the University of Guyana, and I'm teaching Portuguese and English. Bom dia, meu nome Wapichano é Beija-Flor e em inglês é Wendy. Eu sou de uma comunidade indígena chamada Shelton. Eu comecei a dar aula na Universidade da Guyana recentemente e eu dou aula de português e de inglês.
Many languages spoken indigenous languages spoken in Guyana. Now, I think it's necessary to prioritize. So I'd like to add to what Charlene has said, since there are languages that are disappearing, and Lokono being one. There's also Warao, right? Maybe Akuayo, Carib.
Yes.
So these are the languages we need to focus on. We're not disregarding the other languages. So as I mentioned in my presentation yesterday, we cannot wait until the language has reached the stage of being endangered to be able to start doing work, right? To encourage the speakers to continue speaking, or to develop programs to maintain the importance, to maintain the language, or to have the speakers, to keep the language alive, let's say. So although these languages are, these languages that we have mentioned, so Carib, Lokono, Warao, and so on, are slowly disappearing, we also need to focus on these other languages. But I'm happy that you have stated, and you've mentioned that in French Guyana and in Suriname, there's work being done. So from a really young age, which is really important for language acquisition, in Lokono, for example, and we need that right now in Guyana. So I see a possibility of collaborating with these two countries to be able to strengthen, or to start and to sustain a project or a program where Lokono language is concerned.
Good morning, everyone. My name in Wapichana is the Hummingbird, and in English it's Wendy Leandro Springer. It's a pleasure to be here in this community, and I'm also happy to have the opportunity to share some of my knowledge with you as it relates to language. So as some of my colleagues have mentioned, a lot has been spoken about preserving culture, but how much is being done to do that? I know that there are some work that is being done, some programs as it relates to language preservation, but I personally feel that we can do more. We know that there are different realities. Take, for example, there are now what you call bilingual, passive bilingual speakers. These are speakers who may understand the language but do not speak it, so they have a passive use of it and not an active use of it. Or they may know to speak it, but for some reason or the other they would deny it. They would say they do not speak it. So as a result of that, I always try to encourage individuals, families, communities, and the nation as a whole to think about this really important aspect of culture, which is the language. Because as we've heard from the previous presenters, if we do not continue using the language, using it in an active way, it's eventually going to disappear. And we do not want to wait until the languages get to that stage. So although a language might be used, there are many speakers, we still want to do work to be able to upkeep that. So how can we do this? I would like to make some recommendation. I haven't got many personal experiences, but I would like to make some recommendation. It is important to plan carefully. In yesterday's presentations from the group work, we heard one group talking about funding. We should not totally depend on foreign funding, and this is important. And how can we do that? So if we can have very good ideas for projects. They can last for a year, but then the funding comes to an end and it just collapses. So we don't want that. but what can we do to make a change? So we need to plan carefully. And planning would involve identifying key stakeholders and always remember to engage communities, because this is really, really important. Where we can bring ideas. So we don't want to come to the communities and impose ideas to them. We want to have, we want to have a brainstorming of ideas for projects. Build a rapport with the community members and also key participants who can contribute. We've got very important traditional knowledge that they can share. And then, we can try to choose or prioritize the project ideas. And okay, so having done that, we need to do something that's really, really important, and I don't know how many people take this importantly. So many times we may have good project ideas, and we go into the communities and we start the project, but we do not know. We don't have a clear understanding as to what the reality is like in those communities. What is the linguistic situation in that community? Are there only Makushi speakers, only Wapishana speakers, or are there speakers of other indigenous languages in the schools? How is that dealt with? So if we want to start a bilingual project, we just say, okay, it's a good idea, but then we do not know what the reality is. So how can we plan strategically? How can we have a good plan so that the project can be sustainable? The answer is research. So having done research or conducting a good research, you'd be able to have a good understanding what the situation is like or what the context is like in that specific community or communities, and you would be able to plan accordingly, and of course your project would be sustainable. So what can we do now? What I would like to suggest to the NGOs and other government entities, whenever there are meetings, for example, in the communities. Let's take, for example, now, just as how we have translators for French, Dutch, we should have one for Makushi, we should have one for Wapishana. So we can start by doing that. We don't have to wait for a lot of funding to start respecting the language. And I always want to target education, because the preservation of cultural heritage through education should be encouraged, because that is how tangible and intangible cultural heritage can be safeguarded. So that's basically what I would like to share with you this morning. Thank you.